Hi, it's Claire coming to you from my studio as usual in Irene. It's the 1st of November already. It's ridiculous how quickly this year is going. So we have basically a month left of videos that we will bring to you every Tuesday. And then in December we'll be showing you quilts that our Handi Quilter family members have made during the year. So it's always good to have a bit of show and tell. This month we're going to look at rulers of different kind of shapes, unusual shapes. Not your straight lines, not your normal curves, but the more sort of unusual shapes. Handi Quilter has a range of different ones. There's hexagons, there's leaves, there's triangles, there's all kind of thing. And often you just don't see the potential of those rulers. Yes, you've always got on the back of the packet a few suggestions, but sometimes you really got to put your brain into action and think about what can I actually do with this ruler. So we're going to spend a bit of time over the next few weeks playing, just working on different designs, seeing what comes out. Not everything's going to be successful, but if you don't play, you don't learn, you don't create, and then the tools just sit there in your drawer and never actually get used either. So today I'm going to be looking at the Half-carat. It is this sort of kite shape, kind of diamondy ruler. And I'm going to draw some designs, and then I've quilted a few out too. I'm going to show you those as well. So have fun playing, have a look in your drawers, see what unusual rulers you've got, and start playing and see what you can do with them. Okay, let's head to the paper and pen, and I'll show you what I've come up with this Half-carat template. Okay, so here we are with pen, paper and a drawing wheel, because remember, when you're quilting with your rulers, especially on inside shapes, your foot is going to make the shape smaller. You're going to quilt 1/4 inch away from the line, so it's going to make your shape smaller. So when we're drawing, it's good to use a drawing wheel, because then you're going to get an accurate representation of the size of the design. I'm hoping for the best because there's 2 dogs in the studio and anything can happen. Hopefully they are going to stay quiet while we do this. Okay, so I have the Half-carat diamond template. This one, you can hopefully actually see it better if I leave it down on the paper. It's like a kite shape. And I've drawn myself here a sashing, a representation of a sashing that is 2.5 inches wide. If I look at the distance across the diamond here, it's 2.25. So you could do a 2.25 inch sashing, but 2.5 would be more sort of standard, and it just means that you can have a little bit of space on either side before you hit the edge of the sashing. So I've got my lines that represent the edge of the sashing, and I've also put myself a halfway mark. So it's 1.25 inches away from the edge. That gives me the center of that sashing. If it was on the frame or on the quilt and I was actually going to quilt it, then that line would be a chalk line. The thick lines would be the piecing lines of the fabric. Okay, so I'm going to start over here, and we're going to go with some options for a sashing. What I'm doing is I'm lining up the line that goes through the center of the diamond here with my center line that I've marked on my quilt. And then I'm just going to quilt around. So this is my quilting line. I'm going to go once, and then I'm going to go another half time around, because I want to be able to move this direction. If I go full, I'm going to stop over there, and then I can't link into the next one. So I just come around 1.5 times. This is where my needle is. I'm going to move the template along and just make sure that I'm lining up that center line again. And I'm going to go again 1.5 times around. Scoot along. 1.5, and let's do one more. 1, and then I'm actually going to do my half and end there. So remember, that's where my needle is there, over here. I'm then going to spin this around, so it's going to come in the opposite direction. Here's my needle, and I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm lining up the halfway or the central line on the ruler. So rulers without lines are not very helpful actually. The lines on them make using them and working with them so much easier. So a decent ruler is always going to have lots of great marking lines on it. So I'm just coming back, going 1.5 times around each one, lining up my center line. There. If I take my ruler away, I've got myself actually quite a cool pattern. So depending on how you feel, you can either leave it exactly as it is, so it would be plain and simple, or you can look at different ways to fill in and add some free motion quilting. So remember, free motion quilting is if you want to create texture, you want areas that are heavily quilted next to areas that are left open, because that's what's going to give you texture. So if I leave these outside parts in the sashing open, the pieces next to it need to be quilted reasonably heavily. So that would be these little diamonds, and the big diamond in the middle would be open. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to put little pebbles in here. So these would be free motion. Okay, so in this one, maybe I should even just mark in that sashing line a bit more darkly, that it makes more sense. Let's do that one quickly. And this one, whoops, there goes a fingernail. Okay, so I've got a puffy area, a flatter area, and a puffy area. So this design is going to look pretty cool. Say I want a different option, and I can quilt this area that in the last example was puffy. Let me quilt it down. So if I quilt little matchstick kind of lines in it, it's going to flatten this area. Okay, so now I've got flat and I've got puffy, so the diamond in the center would need to be flatter. Now you can choose whatever you want to do in that area to flatten it down. I love ribbon candy, so let's try some of that. There we go. So this design obviously has got far more quilting in it. It's going to take you longer to quilt, but it's going to look really cool. This one is a more simple option, but also looks really nice. Let's look and see what we could do with blocks. So I've got here marked 2 9-inch squares. I've got back to my template. The easiest one really, I suppose, is going to be to start in the center here and to use the kite shape to make a kind of a flower shape. So when you're doing this and you're actually quilting it, you want to quilt opposites and not just go immediately around each segment in a clockwise or anti-clockwise, because if there's any fullness in your fabric, you're just going to end up pushing it around, and when you come back to the last diamond that you want to quilt, you're going to have a bubble. So you're going to quilt this one, and then you're going to quilt its opposite number. So then I'm going to move my template to here, and I'm going to quilt that side. Come back to the center, and I will quilt the square diagonals, if I can put it that way. And I'm again lining up the center here with the center line there. And I didn't say it, but maybe you recognize it already. There's a crosshair marked on here, so you can use your centering tool. We have it as stencil CW5 in the shop, and that gives you the center of your blocks, and it also gives you these great 8 lines going around that you can also then use. Okay, so once I've got my 4, my fabric is then stabilized. Nothing much is going to move too much. So now I can go around and mark those additional angles or those additional shapes. So okay, so there is my initial shape. I can either leave it as that, or I can choose to put more detail into it. Okay, so let's add some fairly simple detail to this one. What I'm going to do is just use a ruler and give myself some sight lines on the diagonal lines. So I'm just eyeballing about 1/2 inch in from the points. So if I give myself a straight line between those two, go 1/2 inch, and on that line there also 1/2, and it's going to be the same over here. Okay, so when I'm using my quilting ruler, I'm just going to use a normal ruler now, but when you're using your straight ruler, you're just going to aim to hit those points with your needle. Okay, and you're going to end up then with this kind of an effect. Okay, so now it's looking a little bit more interesting, and you can again leave it there, or you can carry on and do more. So I kind of like this area. It's a fairly open area, and I like swirly shapes. So let's just put a simple swirl in each of those. I want to make sure that my swirl is heading in the same direction on each one. There we go. And that's sufficient. If you really wanted, if this was a block, I would stitch in the ditch around the block, and I would actually do that before I put the design in. So remember, as you quilt, it pulls in your fabric. So if I have stitched in the ditch first, I've stabilized that area, so then it can't actually pull in too much, or if it does pull in, it's going to pull in evenly. If I hadn't stitched it in, I might find that I've got like a wobbly edge around the block now, which doesn't look so great. So yeah, I should have stitched in the ditch first. Let's move to this one. And this one I'm going to make a little bit more complicated. So first I'm going to take my straight edge ruler and do it the way that I should have done the first time. Hey? So I'm going to stitch in the ditch around my block, just with a straight edge. And if you look at it, let me do it there first. The the half-carat diamond template, it does have quite a nice straight edge on it. So I don't even need to fish around in my drawer for a straight edge ruler. I can use this one to help me stitch in the ditch as well. So I can just move it and stitch here. That one's cool. Okay, so what I'm going to do, my needle ended there when I did my stitch in the ditch. I'm going to put my ruler onto my machine with my needle down. And I'm going to line up the point of the diamond with the edge of my block. Okay, and I'm going to stitch one to there. And then I'm just going to use the edge of the ruler. I'm just going to shift it so that I can stitch back down to my point. Okay, so I'm here. Then I'm going to make the edge of the ruler parallel to the edge of the block. So my ruler is 1/4 inch away. But when I stitch, that edge of my diamond is going to be in the ditch of my block. Okay, so again, my needle is here. Now I'm going to swing it that I have the point over this dividing line. And go again around. There we go. Oops, I've moved just a tiny bit. This one here, I'm 1/4 inch away from the block edge and nice and parallel, so that I stitch this line in the ditch and then come around my shape. And for the last one, I rotate and I have the point of the kite or the shape there to be able to get that shape. Okay, so if I take away, you're going to have that. So my needle is here. I can use the straight edge within the diamond to get to my corner over here, because I want to repeat that design in all 3 corners. So let me do that first, and we'll speed it up a bit because it'll take a little while, and then I'll show you what else I'm going to do. Okay, so I've got all 4 corners covered. It's almost like a Dresden plate kind of effect. And then that could work. For me, the problem with this one is there's a big space open in the middle. So remember, where I've got quilting lines, it's going to be flatter. Where there's no quilting, it's going to be more puffy. So at the moment with this block, you can have like a bubble in the center because there's no quilting here. So what I thought I would try is I want to fill up these spaces here. So I'm going to use the sharper point of that ruler, and I'm actually going to use a line that is on my ruler, but I'm going to mark it in for you so it's a little bit more clear. Can you see there? I've marked in. It doesn't want to show so nicely. There we go. A darker line. So then that line I'm going to use on my crosshairs. So I've got quarter lines, and I've got obviously the line that comes through the center of the diamond. So if I place those lines over the horizontals, and then I take my wheel, I'm actually going to put my needle down on the diagonal cross line. So this is the one that is marked with chalk. And I'm going to go, I think I'm going to go 1, and I'm going to go around until I get to the other diagonal line on this side. Okay, then I'm keeping my needle here. I'm going to rotate the ruler, and I need those thick lines that I've chalked over my vertical chalk lines, and I need the centers here lined up. This is my needle, so I'm going to go around again, 1 and a bit, until I hit the diagonal of the next shape going around. Okay, so I'm going to spin my ruler. The thick lines are over my horizontal line here now, and my points are over the center. So I'm ready to go. Go till I hit the next diagonal line. Twist one more time. Make sure everything is lined up. There. And I've got a very cool shape. So you can again leave it exactly as it is. You've got enough quilting here that your quilt's not going to disintegrate when it's washed. There's plenty of quilting. It's simple. Rulers are slow in any case, but this one is going to help you out. If you want, you can look at that thing of high and low, quilted heavily, not quilted so heavily, and figure out a way to add some additional quilting to it. So you could be tempted, and I most likely would be, to fill in some kind of a filler pattern in here. Okay, so the background part then is going to be squashed down. The star in the center will stand up more, and the Dresden plate kind of bits on the edge are also going to stand up a bit more. This one I have to give credit to John Cole Morgan. We were chatting this morning on WhatsApp, and I was telling him what I was doing, and he was firing so many ideas at me of different things. So this one is inspired a little bit by some of John's ideas. Thanks, John, you're a star. I think I'll employ you for next week. Okay, so go look and see what templates you've got that you haven't used in a while. Have a little bit of a play. It's the only way that you're going to learn the potential of them. If you want this one, the half-carat diamond template, it's available in our online store as usual, www.handyquiltersa.com. Until next week, happy quilting.